Ladies and gentlemen, in this Red Gaming Tech.com video, I want to talk to you about survival horror in my opinion and how it's gotten significantly worse in the last number of years. Now, back in the days of the early PlayStation games and PlayStation 2, you might remember titles such as the original Resident Evil, indeed the remake on the GameCube, Silent Hill 1 and particularly 2 were phenomenal games. Not just with the way the story was being told to you, but also the way that you felt nervous about entering new areas, about boss fights. Not necessarily because you were terrified in that, that ghostly apparition would scare you, but more that you were concerned about the fact that, hey, you might not make it out of this situation alive. And everyone has a section like that in one of the games. If you speak to your friends who played, say, Resident Evil 2, they'll tell you about, hey, you know what, I really, got nervous on this section, or, in Silent Hill, you know what, this part really bothered me. And, for example, on Resident Evil 1, one of the areas that really used to annoy the hell out of me was the snake. And this is because, obviously, I was trying to do it without saving, and I knew fully well that there was a good chance that I could get basically gobbled up by the snake, and that would be basically me, or I could get poisoned. And I didn't want to fight the snake because I was saving ammunition. This is particularly true if you were playing as, say, Chris, because Chris had, well, very little ammo, and therefore you didn't want to waste it or use it in any way, shape or form. And obviously this continued with Resident Evil 3, and obviously you were able to mix ammo and everything was good there, and Resident Evil Code Veronica came out on, of course, the Dreamcast to begin with, and then it later got ported onto the PS2 along with a few other systems. And to be honest with you, Resident Evil Code Veronica was a very, very good game, and probably one of my favourite Resident Evils, if I'm completely honest with you. And then Resident Evil 4 came out, and I really liked it. I actually imported the American copy of it for the GameCube, and I loved it. I really did. I thought it was excellent. Now, I was a little bit concerned at the time about the way that the inventory system worked, and it was slightly less puzzle orientated, but you know what, I could deal with it. But now I think survival horror is really taking a bad turn, and one of the reasons that it's being marched in this direction, in my opinion at least, is Resident Evil 5 and 6. Back in the early days of when the internet was really just kind of first coming about, and I was talking to my friends about Resident Evil, I was always joking with them, imagine a co-op Resident Evil game. And when we were saying this, we were actually referring to, of course, Resident Evil in the Resident Evil 1 sense of the word, not Resident Evil in Resident Evil 5 or 6, where you could basically go over melee a zombie and laugh and point as it helplessly flails. It's just, not cool. And other games, such as Silent Hill Downpour, have somewhat tried to capture the essence. I actually don't mind Silent Hill Downpour. It had a few issues, but I think overall it was a pretty good game. I think in actuality, in terms of a horror game now, survival horror, Silent Hill is definitely beating Resident Evil. Now, I think Resident Evil has always been slightly inferior to Silent Hill in terms of the, the scary aspect. But now, Silent Hill is just beating it hand over fist, which is a shame, as I'm a massive fan of some of the Resident Evil characters, in particular Albert Wesker. He's probably one of my favourite villains, gaming villains anyway, of all time. So, right now, I'm not really sure of how I feel about things. As you guys might know, one of the guest hosts on our channel, Spoonie Kipper, has been playing through the PlayStation 3 version of Resident Evil 6, and indeed he's completed it with everyone. And I was speaking to him about this yesterday, and he just said that he just didn't feel the excitement of the game after a little bit. And to be honest, after watching his playthroughs myself, after just the first couple of videos, I just thought to myself, I went from really wanting the game on right that second, I actually was tempted just to pop up to the shop and just grab it. And then after just a couple of the videos, I just thought to myself, you know what, I actually am really good to wait for the PC version. And now, I'm actually at the point where, if it comes out and I see it on the Steam sale or something, I'll probably pick it up. Other than that, I probably won't. And it's not because, woe is Capcom, or woe is me. I just I feel that you should vote with your money, and I don't have a particular problem with the action orientation of Resident Evil, as long as there's still some horror aspects there, and in my opinion, at least they tried to please everyone. So, at the moment, of course, there are some still reasonably good survival horrors around, but they're being made by indies, indie developers, obviously, and it's not quite in the same vein as previous survival horror titles. So obviously you've got Amnesia, The Dark Descent, which is really popular, and obviously a lot of fan-made mods. It's not quite survival horror in the traditional aspect of the things, as in you being put into a scary mansion and or situation, but I suppose technically speaking you're in a lot worse situation, for the simple reason that you don't actually have, well, anything. You don't have any weapons whatsoever to protect yourself with. Or you've got basically harsh words and the shift key to run. And that's pretty much it. But you know what? It works really well. And for the most part, I actually really, really do like it. Then you've got other titles, such as, let's say, Deadlight. Deadlight, of course, uses the Unreal Engine. And it's a 2D game, which slightly influences the horror aspect. But it works. It's not exactly survival horror in how you would, picture it in Resident Evil. Indeed, you're mostly using puzzles and that type of thing to kill the enemies, but it does work really well, and I'm actually quite a big fan of it. And it's a real shame, because every time I think about survival horror titles, even The Walking Dead, which of course is a point-and-click title more than anything, to be honest, and I don't really consider it a survival horror in the technical terms. It's more of a horror game. The Walking Dead is pretty good, and just like in the comics, of course, you're all indeed in the TV show, it's never a happy time. No one in their right mind is ever going to tell you that, after watching The Walking Dead, they were happy and thought, the sun was wonderful. It's one of those dark, depressing type of games. And you know what? The Walking Dead is good, and I really like the storyline aspect of it and so on, but it just doesn't have what it takes. And I'm really hoping that developers such as Capcom and indeed Konami, of course, who are responsible for, of course, the Silent Hill franchise, get their butts in gear and just try to produce more, terrifying content that we actually want. Content where I actually not feel like I'm 100% going to be fine every situation. Like, I've got so much ammo I could basically take on all the enemies at once. I mean, one of the examples of this is, if you guys remember Resident Evil 4, there was a cheesy way of basically being able to beat pretty much any boss, depending if you had enough cash. If you had the cash, you could basically buy the rocket launcher. And it was a half cheesy way to say, hey, you know what, you just don't have the ammo for this boss, or you know what, you don't have the skill for this boss, or you know what have you, and you can basically just buy your way to victory on this boss. And to be honest with you, I didn't mind that. I didn't love it. I didn't think it was fantastic. I didn't mind it at all, though. It did work, and in my opinion, it was one of the better ways to do it, because it basically meant that, hey, you know what, you're not forced into this. If you don't want to be basically cheesy, you don't have to be. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, you know what, in Resident Evil 5, for example, you don't have to go in with a partner, which makes things significantly easier, obviously, if you're playing with a human. However, I don't know if you guys remember the Wesker Jill fight, where obviously you have to basically survive the time. It's not too bad until you start ranking up the difficulty. As soon as you crank that difficulty up high enough, it becomes absolutely the most frustrating thing in the world, because your partner just stands there and gets shot to death. And of course, Resident Evil 6 does support better AI, but at the end of the day, you're still at the mercy of AI. And I just don't like that. I don't like having to depend on an AI partner. It's one of the, banes of existence. One of the one of the really awesome things I like about survival horror is the fact that you are alone. And okay, there are the odd character here and there that you're interacting with, and you might be getting bits of storyline from them, but they're not there to basically, you know, wipe a tear from your eye, give you a pat on the back, and then give you a hug if something scary jumps out at you. It just doesn't happen. And more to the point, they're not there to get you artificially murdered. And of course that means you could play online with friends. And don't get me wrong, I would love it, for example. Let's create a mythical scenario here. Let's say that let's go with Resident Evil 1, just for example. And let's say that there's a mythical scenario where you could play through the entire game on your own. And then there's another mode where it's called co-op or something like that. And some of the parts of the game are skipped over or slightly changed. And you know what? You are now Chris and Jill. You know, your buddy's playing as Jill, you're playing as Chris, and you're going through the game as and when. And, you know, maybe the monsters are a little bit tougher or whatever, but the point being, it doesn't necessarily have to match up completely with the storyline. It's not official. It's not how the game's supposed to be played. Normally you don't play with a partner. It just works like that. Another example I'd like to point out, actually, is Resident Evil 0. Resident Evil 0 is probably one of the less known Resident Evil main titles because obviously it was released on the ill-fated GameCube, and I use the word ill-fated in a light way. But Resident Evil 0, of course, allowed you to do partner switching, and it worked fairly well. It had a few issues to it, and I really liked the game and the storyline, but nevertheless, I don't know, it does sound like I'm picking extensively on Resident Evil here, and it's not because, you know, I'm disillusioned with the franchise to the point where I hate it or anything like that, or, you know, anything silly. But what I do feel is that Resident Evil is one of my favourite games of the genre, and I really wish that they would go back to producing games how they used to be. As I've said, we do have Silent Hill. Silent Hill, a couple of them have been a bit poorer. However, Downpour is definitely a step in the right direction, in the scary direction. It's not quite as amazing as what it could have been. It's kind of funny because Amnesia is obviously the co-runner of the channel. She was at some games exhibition in the UK, and she was playing it, and they gave her like 15-20 minutes or what have you to, you know, play the game as they do with everyone. And as she was playing it, she said, you know what, this, you know, I don't want to get my hopes up because I've done that before, and this actually could be a really good game. And when it came down to it, and we both tried it out, we both rented it actually, and we both quite liked it. I haven't actually completed it yet, but that's not because the game sucks, you know, it's simply because I just haven't had the time. But that's just that's completely, you know, that's a completely rubbish excuse really. I should try to make the time. It is a really good game. I've gotten quite far. I'm about halfway, maybe 3/4 actually, probably more like. Anyway, this is a bit of a rant. What I would like to know from you guys, however, is what do you think? What's your thoughts on survival horror at the moment? And obviously, Capcom themselves are coining a phrase. What is it? I made a note of it before I started. Ah, yes. Dramatic horror is basically what they're calling it from Resident Evil 6 onwards. I don't know if it's that dramatic, to be honest. I don't know. I don't like to sound like the disillusioned, should I say, player, but Resident Evil, I really want to like it. I really would like to see it go back to its old phrasing. And you know what? Other titles, like, what's a good example? Let's say Parasite Eve on the Sega Saturn. I don't know if you... Sega Saturn. On the Sony PlayStation. Which, to be honest, I really wish they would make another one of those. I think they have on the handhelds, but not on the main, you know, big consoles. And I don't believe they did one on the PS2. Unless, I don't know, maybe it didn't come out in the UK or something, but as far as I'm aware, they didn't. I think there was one that was released on maybe the PSP. Please let me know on that one, guys. I really liked Parasite Eve. I played the second and some of the first. I didn't actually complete the first, but I did complete the second. And I don't think one of them was released. I don't remember which, but I don't think one of them was released in the UK. I believe I had to import that. Regardless, it was a very good game, and it worked well. I really like the power-up system. The fact that, and you know what, one of the things that many people say is people don't like to feel, what's the word, helpless in a situation. You know, they want to feel like they're able to be powerful, at least have some chance. And my argument is, look at Parasite Eve. You have a lot of abilities in it, and you basically, you know, have the ability to manipulate fire or telekinesis, that type of thing. I don't remember exactly because it was like, what, 1999 or, you know, 1998 or something I was playing these games, but I do definitely remember the powers. And you felt powerful, and you felt like, you know, you had all these awesome abilities, but at the same time, there was also ridiculous abilities from the bosses, and it was really cool. It was a really great example of, well, Japanese horror. So, I would really like to see Silent Hill return to form. Obviously, you have other titles like Fatal Frame, but as I said, I don't really 100% classify it as survival horror. That's just me. We do also have, of course, have titles like Penumbra, which is really good. I'm yet to play them, actually. I think I actually own one of the titles. I'm not sure which one. I think it might be Overture on Steam. And you know what, I'm probably going to have to complete it at some point. There is a ridiculous amount of mods, of course, for Amnesia Dark Descent. So, is this how it's going to be? Well, for a while I imagine possibly so. I have no doubt in my mind that we're going to see a return of survival horror at some point or another, maybe in the distant future. Whether Resident Evil 7 is going to be like that, who the hell knows? But anyway, as I said, I'd like to hear what you guys think. You know, what are you playing at the moment for your survival horror fixes? Do you prefer the more action-orientated approaches to this? Or, you know, are you like me and maybe lamenting the, you know, the chests and everything else of Resident Evil 1 and 2? And so, yeah, leave your comments below, and I'll possibly do a follow-up video in a few months' time and give you some thoughts. Anyway, hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video. I will no doubt see you guys around soon. Bye for now.